So I think the first point I always try to make clear to people is basically at a high level, when you talk about scaling, there's like two basic options. There's less and there's safe. So how do I usually explain less to people? I say the key thing with less is one backlog, right? So whatever you're going to do, it's going to be the closest to Scrum because you always have one and only one backlog. You have your product owner with the backlog, and you're going to have multiple teams underneath, like this basic triangle shape, right? So you can have as many teams as you want down here, but you're going to have one product owner and one backlog, and you run one big sprint. When they talk about less huge, so what about if you go over 8 teams, right? You still keep the same basic, still one product owner, one backlog, and then you're going to have like the area, what they call the area product owners. And they distinguish between these by just giving them some colors. So there are some blue items on this backlog that go to that area, some red items, etc.
So, and in this case, can we assume that if it goes to red, red is completely independent of the other two colors to be able to fulfill the work?
Correct. So every team down here, so it's one big scrum, which means every team has to be able to deliver a shippable increment at the end of the sprint.
Without the help of the others, or at least of the other areas.
Without the help of the others. Maybe we deliver something that's going to be, we deliver a small feature here and they deliver a small feature here, and these combine to like some bigger feature. That's possible, but it's independent, yes. And so you still have the same basic triangle, right? It's the one product owner on top, the one backlog. We're running one big sprint. And okay, we have like some dedication and colors here because it's a big product and we're always moving on some different parts of the product.
Probably each of the area POs might be working with different stakeholders that are not involved in the others because it's a very specific topic, etc., etc.
Right. So one backlog and then also one sprint.
So I've just been looking at safe a little bit more, right? So what's the difference with that first essential level? They also have the team level, which I see there, and they also have the product delivery level, which they call then the art backlog and the team backlog. How do these things compare or differ?
Okay, hold your horses, because I think the first point is like, so this is one approach and you have one backlog and you can scale like this. According to LeSS, you can go as big as you want. I would argue there's going to be a limit there because if you're 5,000 people, I think this breaks down. But Safe basically breaks this. This is the key difference, right? Safe says, no. You don't need this because, of course, this is hard to implement because, like you said, every team here has to be able to deliver value by themselves, independent. It takes a really high technical maturity. So Safe says, no. We're going to have multiple layers of product ownership. And basically they're saying, so I don't know, down here you have the teams. So there are backlogs at this level, team backlogs, which basically have stories, an increment we can deliver in a sprint, right? And then they're going to have some product ownership here, the art, right? The release train.
So there's no product owners in the teams there. The product is the same. For me, it's the same picture as
well, no. There are product owners. Each of these teams have their own little story backlogs, and there's product ownership here. This is team agility. You can use whatever. You can do Kanban, you can do Scrum here.
Oh wait, and unless you have the one product owner, but every team also has a product owner there or not?
Every team is always connected to one product owner. Like, I think that's an agile rule, more or less, right? If a team needs to have one product owner, so they have one set of priorities. So here, but in simple LeSS, who's the product owner for each of these three teams? The answer is the same. It's this guy.
Okay, and it's a one-on-one. So if you go down, the difference is that one of those three little guys that you wrote there, one of those up there, no one higher, is going to give work to each of the three teams below.
Well, into a release train, we mainly put features, right? So one feature is going to equal multiple stories, and these features have product owners, right? Like, and then like again in the details, you're going to have like they have the business owners and a bunch of terminology, but basically there's product ownership. Each level here has product ownership. The product owner here is figuring out, estimating the stories, figuring out all the little dependencies, like,
but he gets work from each of, so there's going to be.
But he's inheriting priorities from these guys, because these guys say, okay, for the next quarter, these are the important features. And then they take the features and they break them down and they do the team level product ownership.
Yeah, and again, so those three have to agree what is the highest priority to give to the team.
That's the PI planning, right? So in every level, you have a planning cycle. Here it's the sprint, here it's the PI planning, it's the quarter. So every quarter, all the product owners at this level have to sort of put out their plans and agree on what are we going to work on. Yes. So and how do they know what's important? Because they get their priorities from up here, right?
So that's the difference between the thing on top. There's always only one person who gives you work, while here there's different places where the work comes from.
Right. So here you have the epics. And how do these guys know where they get their priorities from? From up here, where hopefully it's like the CEO or something like that, but basically where you have teams or, the strategy, let's say, and the point, of course, is this is much simpler. It's much clearer. It's going to be much faster. There's a lot of decision speed. We can be very agile and flexible. Here, every time we have a problem at a layer, you need to escalate to the higher layer. That's the only way to. So if we don't agree on a planning for the PI for the quarter here, it's going to be escalated here. And these guys are going to fight it out. And if they don't agree here, then it's going to be escalated here, right?
And there's another question I have, the idea around what is a component team and a feature team, right? So I've always understood that unless there's only feature teams, which means that each team independently could deliver something, while an extra difficulty in the thing on the bottom is that even the three teams that you see there need each other to deliver one thing of one of those product owners, which is another difference. Am I right or wrong, or am I misunderstanding something?
I think if I understand your question correctly, I think you're misunderstanding. So these guys don't necessarily depend on each other to deliver value.
Mm-hmm. They could potentially deliver something on their own.
But I do think that's a key difference. Let's say the challenge here. So I know the downside is like you need to be technically excellent, basically. It just requires technical excellence.
Each team on their own again.
Exactly. Like you need to, these guys can deliver on their own. They don't depend on each other. No. Of course, it's not that it has to be perfect at the start, but you have to be pretty good at it. When you go to a large organization, like a big bank or whatever, this is, impossible. It's not realistic in the short or even midterm that these guys are going to be able to deliver independently and do all these cool stuff. So then this fits better, right? Because it's, okay, then we know how to work this way. Okay, so we might have some dependencies here. How do we solve those dependencies? By having clarity over here, and we're going to plan well, etc. But you don't need to have dependencies here. If these guys are technically excellent, imagine the PI planning is just much easier. Everything is much easier. So, but it doesn't require the technical excellence.
Yeah, so here is where I'm a little bit lost in the safe thing. So they talk about essential, they talk about large, portfolio, and full. I actually see, so essential is the two lower levels you draw there. And then you have large, they add a solution layer.
Yeah.
And then, or they say there's a portfolio layer. It's an and, it's
yeah, okay, but
or, and then only then they add the both, which they call the full-blown thing.
But that's a key difference, I think. LeSS is like it's like a Scrum. It's like Scrum. It's like a framework in the sense that kind of nothing is optional. Like, of course, you can always break rules, but you have to kind of do everything they say because it's so simple. Like they're not asking for a lot. Safe is the opposite. Safe is like a library of scaling patterns with like some kind of like, how you can connect them. But like what they will say is you don't need these 4 levels. If you're like, a 500-person organization and you guys are doing pretty well, then you have a pretty good technical maturity, maybe just do this. Just do PI plannings and have your teams and you just align every quarter. And you don't need these top 2 levels. So it's like, if you look at the big picture and everything they have there, it's like, you can pick and choose kind of. They need to be coherent. Like you need to have some knowledge on how they plug in, but you don't have to do everything. You do what you need. It's more like a library.
my feeling is like we always say, like teams should be able to build solutions and build products, be what you wrote there, be the technical, have the technical excellence to do it by themselves. So in safe, when they say like this is kind of like impossible, so that's why we add these layers, or am I misunderstanding?
If you are super bureaucratic, super slow, super traditional, then here you go. You have your 4 levels, and it's going to map very well to what you're doing right now. And we start there. The journey, I think, is the same. Like I think when you're changing an organization, you're basically trying to like move in this direction, right? You're going from safe to less. You might never get here if you're really big or whatever, but you're gonna end. So what I mean going in this direction is you start with all the complexity you have today, and by changing, you're like improving and reducing that complexity. And you're gonna get to the minimum complexity you can handle.
The thing is that in safe, they don't really kind of like sell that or tell that, right? You shouldn't we be afraid that you keep staying stuck in the layers that they put because it's difficult right now and you never require that technical excellence? I mean, what's
I
better,
think that's
right?
a risk, right?
Yeah.
So if the risk here is this requires technical excellence, the main risk here is like change momentum, let's say.
Because in the end, I mean, it might solve or fix or help whatever situation you are in now, but on the long term, companies who go to less will be more agile.
So you can create a very complex operating model with safe, and you put all the layers and all the things in there, and it's okay. Like you're working in an agile way, and you're getting better, and you're improving, but it's working already. So like, we're good right now, and you don't realize you still have a lot of waste in here, a lot of things a lot of simplifications you could do. So when I'm explaining to people, I'm saying here you have backlog hierarchy, which is if you implement this correctly, it's agile, like it's compliant with an agile way of working. We're not breaking any principle, like it works. There's clear priorities, there's alignment, there's collaboration. It should work. But the more hierarchy you have in your backlogs, the slower you are because everything has to be escalated, things like that. And you want to move to simplify. So you're moving in this direction. You're probably like, depending who you are, you might never get here, but continuous improvement is simplifying as much as you can. Like, why do you care about the names? Is it to understand?
No, just because because when you talk to different people in different companies, the one calls it the art, the area, and you need to know, okay, if somebody says art, it's this level, or it's this framework, or where does it come from? What does it mean? Because different companies might use different meanings, and
it's one of the things that I usually, when I'm explaining this, I try to use, like, I say chief product owner, and I say the next sentence I say is, don't worry about it. It's just a name I'm making up. Like, it's just like, you're going to call it different things in your company. What you need to understand is just, there's going to be product owners here. If you call this the team product owner, the proxy, whatever, I don't care. Like, just understand that there's different levels. No, but you also have like product managers is another one. Like, but my company has a product manager.
What's the difference? What's the difference?
I'm like, I don't know. Tell me what they're responsible for, and I'll tell you where they are here, kind of.